So, welcome to the panelists. Welcome to the audience here. I see a few people have joined, and the topic of the day is today is enterprise architecture, the relevance of enterprise architecture, and we'll just have a casual conversation among us about it. But it'll be great if we can have the participation of the audience as well. So feel free to put in any opinions and questions, and I'll read it out to the participants, and we can make it conversational. But just to get the ball rolling, by introductions, let me introduce myself, and then we can go one round around the table. I'm Sumeet Puri, and I'm the Chief Technology and Solutions Officer at Solace. Solace is an organization who focuses on event streaming and basically a backbone for event-driven architectures and integrations. We've been around for about 20 years, and we're reasonably well known in the financial markets, capital markets industries, where give or take 50% of the world's FX trading runs on Solace. And if you know FX trading or capital markets, they have always been event-driven because they need to be to meet their scale, to meet their latency requirements. Things happen, things are streamed. So our perspective onto enterprise architecture is more from an integration, more from a data movement, service mesh, event mesh, data mesh standpoint. And as that glue that plugs everything, we take that view from an architecture standpoint. My background has been, I started as a Java developer, grew up through the ranks over the years, and have had my fair share of architecting telcos and banks and some public sector systems. So that's me, and I've got very knowledgeable and esteemed panelists here with me. So why don't we start with you, Suresh? If you can give an introduction about yourself, and then we can go around.
Thanks, Sumit. Again, welcome to all. Wherever you are joining, but most of you are living in the Europe time zone. So good afternoon to you all. So myself, Suresh, I'm the head of digital integration in Roche. So I'm accountable for integration strategy, setting up the strategic new age strategic integration platforms, and also I'm accountable for integration delivery and operations. I'm based out of Basel in Switzerland. So about Roche, Roche is one of the big pharmaceutical companies in the world, headquartered in Basel, Switzerland. So Roche is a $60 billion plus revenue company per annum. So we are one of the key players in the fight against COVID, a lot of pharma innovations and also the diagnostics capabilities. We are playing that in the COVID fight against COVID as well. And from an organization perspective, there is quite a lot of organic growth and also a lot of acquisitions. And also we are trying to set up a new business model with the concept of personalized healthcare. So for getting to the personalized healthcare, the underlying thing is data and insights to get into the personalized healthcare business. So quite a lot of investments being done in the new business model, which is personalized healthcare. That is about Roche. So overall, I come with the 25 plus years of experience in the manufacturing domain, after that in IT service industry, now in IT captive. Over to you, Kadir.
So guys, I'm Kadir. I'm a senior partner at Inspi. So I started my career in 1996 in a big healthcare pharmaceutical chemistry organization. I don't have an IT background, so I have a chemistry background, but moved into IT in 2001. And, we did basically everything from the bottom up to everything through all IT disciplines. And I ended up in enterprise architecture and started, introducing EA as a practice in 2008, 9, and 10. Then got hired by an EA vendor and worked there for 5 years in pre-sales and post-sales modes. In the end, I was the practice director and the director of practice consulting here over in Europe. And as that company was acquired, Klaus Eisenbecker and I have created Inspi in 2015. So we are a 6 years old company, work basically with most of the global 2000 and Fortune 500 companies. It's interesting to have the customer view doing EA and having as well the dark side of the things, right? Being a vendor and seeing architecture and the customer needs from a completely different perspective. And the difference of Inspi is compared to any other vendor on the market is that we are a technology partner of ServiceNow, and we are the only solution or the only vendor created solutions on an operative platform. So, and ServiceNow is a fantastic solution. And you guys talk about a lot of event-driven things, APIs, integration, and so on. So this is the complexity we have reduced. We are providing solutions which are completely native on one platform. So we're using that global source to do the logical conceptual view, bringing the operational and the physical world together, so you can answer questions in a depth which is normally not possible if you just do integrations. Satish?
Thank you, Kadir. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel session. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Satish Kamath. I'm part of Mars Inc. I'm a member of the enterprise architecture team, and I'm the lead segment architect within Mars. So Mars is a large, $35 billion plus revenue company, one of the largest privately held firms, headquartered in McLean, Virginia, and we have multiple business segments within Mars. So one of the largest segments that we have is Mars Wrigley, which is famous for the chocolate brands like M&M's, Snickers, Dove, Galaxy, Twix, etc., and also the Wrigley gum brands, Spearmint, Orbits, etc. The second largest segment that we have is pet care. So within pet care, we have pet food. So brands like Royal Canin, Pedigree, Whiskas are part of Mars, as well as a lot of vet hospital chains like Banfield, Anicura, VCA. So that's a pet care business. And we have a human food business, which is famous for brands like Uncle Ben's, which is now called Ben's Original, Tasty Bites, and so on. And then we have a global services function that underpins all of these three segments. So I'm the segment architect for Mars Wrigley as well as global services. So this is a global role. And as part of this role, we are responsible to do three things. One is partner with the CIOs to develop the business transformation roadmap. The second one is we have an architecture review and governance function to make sure the technology that we invest to deliver value and are implemented with the right level of controls and take us in the strategic direction forward. And the third key focus area is to simplify our landscape and eliminate technology risks and look at rationalization, consolidation opportunities. So simplify, transform, and innovate. These are the three themes we continuously drive across the organization. And I'm excited to be part of this panel and looking forward for the session. Over to you, Sumeet.
Yeah, thanks, Satish, and thanks to all the panelists for their introductions. So let me start with an introductory question to you, Satish, since we have you here. So as the topic suggests, right, so where do you think EA is now, given that you are in that domain very much? Because, see, tech, the way that we are delivering tech is changing very, very quickly towards a more agile approach and just-in-time IT, and the pace of innovation is increasing. So given that, where do people find the time for architecture? And is it like just hacking away and worrying about it later, or where is the relevance of EA? I think it is relevant, but I'd like to hear from you as a practitioner. Is it central? Is it in line of business teams? Can you throw some light based on your experience?
So the positioning of EA has always been most powerful when it's sitting in between business and IT functions. However, with the talent being federated, technology getting into this business and business folks coming back into technology, the lines are getting blurred. However, the best positioning for an enterprise architecture team is in between these two areas wherein you're non-biased towards business or technology. Historically, standardization has been the goal. In the 90s, when you looked at, you would have required to have a single global application instance. Everybody does the same thing, etc. So we were probably very effective in enterprise architecture, managing governance by compliance, by procedures, by standards, etc. However, as we're stepping into the 2020s and things have been evolving, we're looking at more of smaller projects, test and learns, minimum viable products, testing the hypothesis, failing fast, building iterative product platform structure. So therefore, enterprise architecture team is still very, very relevant because this is the single most important team in the organization that has an helicopter view of the entire enterprise And if you're talking about 10 billion, 20 billion, 40, 50 billion enterprise, you can imagine a large portfolio of technology estate. And this team can help balance benefit with risks. Sometimes what happens is we launch into projects without thinking, look at the big picture. We struggle to scale. Maybe an innovation wins in one area, but cannot scale in the other. So enterprise architecture has been required to do three things right now, in my view. The first one is, look at renewing the business models and apply where can technology add value, coming up with, jointly with our senior leaders around new business models, new digital revenue channels, etc. So that's one part of focus. The second part has been moving from a technology function to technology strategy function, like more of an internal management consultancy. That's another theme that we've seen focusing on. And the third piece is about looking for information-driven enablement of the organization. So where can you add automation? Where can you add AI? Where can you sense events? And ultimately help our leaders make the right decisions at the right time.
That's great. That's great. Very comprehensive. So, how do you deal with EA from a tooling perspective, from a practice perspective, given your background? Like, what's the vendor's perspective? I mean, you see a lot of organizations. What trends are you seeing in the relevance of EA and the evolution of EA in today's times?
Right. I think I fully agree with Satish, what you have said. So from a vendor's perspective, what we see, the maturity of EA is going forward, but still it's a niche area. Most of the people, we are struggling to describe people, what is enterprise architecture? Only the experts know, right? So, and I think that is still the struggle we have. People do not see within the organization what value EA can really provide to the organization, especially when we do the transformation stuff, right? We have, like Satish said, the helicopter view. We can connect the dots. And enterprise architecture management is absolutely a must-have discipline, because if you look for the people who are in their silo doing process management, they do not see outside of the box. An enterprise architect can always go in any part of the organization, in any business unit, and can tell the people how they can do smarter their work. It is a little bit arrogant then, so you have to find the balance. But the model I have seen, what works the best is to provide internally EA as a service to your stakeholders. So don't show them the full picture, show them always the lenses, the perspectives they are looking to the world. By the way, my experience, another experience is there is no universal truth. It always depends from the perspective people are looking on your data, the information to make decisions. The problem is in architecture, the architects have that visibility. They can connect the dots and make recommendations for suggestions, but they don't have the power to make the decision itself. And that is what they are struggling all the time. So having the right tools in place will solve it, but architecture is not about those tools, right? It is about the practice. It is about the governance. It is to have that documentation, to know what you have today, and then make your blueprints, bring in your plans to say, okay, that's where we need to go as an organization. And then always do the compliance check and say, where are we now? Where are we going next? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. Totally. And now if we take this into the Roche context, right? So agree, disagree, 100% agree, somewhat disagree. And how do you take this central function into line of business teams, right? As Kadir also mentioned that the EA team could say that, oh, we have a strategy of using such and such patterns and such technologies, while the line of business team says that, no, I like that technology, that pattern, that vendor. So how do you operationalize it in a large, complex organization?
So here in Roche, it is a combination of both. There is a central team as well as some of the enterprise architects are embedded into that line of business as well. So it is like a balanced approach. So the enterprise architects in the line of business very closely work with those IT business partners and the product managers. And many of the scenarios, they work together as a team when selecting a new product or while defining a strategy, they work together as a team. So it is not like showing a mirror at a separate point of a time. It's both like working together as a team. That is, I have seen quite a success over there, rather than being more central So integrating to the line of business, I see quite a lot of success stories.
So given your integration and again a very rich background before that as well, Suresh. So I see integration as a glue for various components in an architecture. So if you're building a city, your architecture would be of a city. The integration would be the roads and the rail and the public transport. So you kind of get to see everything, and things are getting into place, and the evolution of the architecture happens on the backbone of good agile integration, whether it's APIs, ESBs back in the day, event streaming in modern times. So how do you interrelate EA in its current context and the evolution of integration together with it? Related, one facilitating the other? Is it symbiotic? Is it the tail wagging the dog? Any thoughts on that?
That's a good question. So about 3 years before in Roche, what we have done is we have taken a step back together with the enterprise architecture team. We partnered together with the enterprise architecture, and we thought of checking with the changing business needs. Should we do a greenfield strategy or should we do a brownfield integration strategy? Because as you said, there are quite a number of applications coming there, and we are in the era of hyper specialization. Sumeet, in the morning session also we spoke about the importance of hyper specialization. So in any global organization, say if you take a Fortune Global 2000 companies, there are more than 1,000 applications on that. Previously, it was monolith ERP surrounded by some core applications surrounding the ERP, but now it is like more than 1,000. So that is one dimension. The second dimension is earlier it is like either the internal applications or the customers, only the two dimension where the integration systems are integrated. Now you're integrating with instruments, Internet of Things, and also the another dimension is integration with the social media. Quite a lot of dimensions have evolved over a period of a time. And also there are changing business requirements, as I said, in Roche. Personalized healthcare is a new business model with the underlying business based on the data and insights which is coming out. So considering all these factors, the decision is partnering together with the enterprise architecture team. So we have decided to follow greenfield implementation strategy. So in the traditional world, like in the ESBs and SOAs, quite a number of point-to-point, even if there's a PubSub, it is like not discoverable, not easily reusable, and a central team, quite a number of central teams need to manage it. But as part of this greenfield strategy, our primary focus is on the AP-led approach and event-driven approach. So it means that all those 1,000 plus applications and many of them needs to talk to each other. So we thought of doing it by an API-led approach and event-driven approach. And our philosophy here in Roche is those integration assets should be like a pluggable digital asset in the form of API and event, so that all those 1,000 plus applications forms a composable enterprise, and the APIs and events are the key enablers, or it is like a Lego blocks for a connected enterprise. So that is the philosophy, and we are on the journey, and we have started quite successfully with this API-led and event-driven, and we are setting up an integration marketplace to make it visible to the entire organization on what are the pluggable digital assets which are available.
That's exciting, having a marketplace, and that should spark innovation, an API economy, and hopefully event APIs going forward. And eventually, we've started to see a lot of talk around data as a product. So all of this should help innovation foster. So on that topic, Satish, you've talked about innovation as well. What do you think is the impact of enterprise architecture to enable innovation for business based on what you see?
So, my perspective, I think enterprise architecture organization has to have an outside-in approach and always be doing market scans, look for new technology innovations that are coming, disruptive innovations that are coming, not just from a technology trends perspective, but even in industry trends and business trends perspective as well. How are the consumer dynamics changing for your industry? what are the supply chain transformation topics that are sort of coming up as big agenda items. How is Industry 4.0 evolving, etc. on one hand, and then you can have things like microservices, API-led, cognitive, robotic process automation, and these type of technology trends that are evolving as well. So first off, I think being aware, being situation aware and raising your self-awareness about what's happening in the industry, both from a tech and a business standpoint, is very, very important. The second one is while you're working from a bottom-up perspective, you always look for, where are the opportunities to simplify, transform, and in between them, you'll probably think that, hey, here's a use case that we can potentially try and innovate, right? So innovation will not come from one team or one department. It generally is very effective when you join the dots from sales to finance to R&D to supply, and something that you can stitch end to end. So enterprise architecture as a function can operate like a table. In fact, not having a seat at the table, but being the table itself, and enable this conversation and help join different departments on a common mission, which is how you can serve your customer better. So the ability to basically join the dots across the team is fundamental to this. Being market aware of the trends, tech and business trends can help spark. And also, because of your awareness of technology scanning, etc., you could potentially not just think about an innovative idea, but even prove that this can be done and try and produce an output in the probably a 12-week sprint, right? A minimum viable mindset. Try and test your hypothesis if this works, and start small. Don't boil the ocean, because innovations probably are happening by accidents and not by purpose sometimes. So you never know what you're getting into. So be user-centric, be empathy-driven, try and join the teams and bring outside-in approach to see how have others solved the problem, what's the best technology, and data-driven approach to solve it. So that's how we've been working at Mars. And just to give you a few examples, we developed the Halloween app in the US when Halloween, the COVID-19 restrictions were applied. Trick and treat is a very big traditional, physical touch moment that consumers really enjoy. And this is big for Halloween in the US. So we came up with a digital app wherein you could do a trick or treat. You can put your house up and say, I'm available. You give away points for someone who comes to your doorstep, and you could sign up, use your avatars, redeem those points, and go and actually buy or exchange them from a Target or a Walmart to get chocolate. So we had to basically work through the end-to-end and use the physical moment to be converted digitally during a crisis and deliver. Maybe for some, it might just look like an app from a tech perspective, but it actually had to connect the supply chain engine, make sure the coupons can be redeemed, make sure your privacy and other controls are taken care of from security perspective, and really bring the joy to people to say at least, okay, Halloween is still alive, Halloween can still happen. So that's just an example I wanted to share.
Nice, very innovative, and I think at some point I'd be very keen to understand all the interactions and how the information would flow. But on that, I'd like to bring Kadir back in. So Kadir, given you mentioned the ServiceNow interactions, and on one hand, we see disparate applications. Suresh mentioned thousands of applications and the evolution in the industry. A lot of these are SaaS applications. And then there are also giants such as Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP is S4. So how do you see again, enterprise architecture coming in as line of business teams are choosing their own platforms, hopefully with the help of the EA teams, but the complexity is only increasing. It's getting more and more digital.
Right. And I think that's now the time, to simplify the things and maybe change a little bit the course, because integration is not the solution for everything. In 2008, I started, creating my EA practice under the wings of standards management. It's a completely bottom-up approach, like 80% of our customers do, or the market does. They're coming from IT. EA is driven by IT. I don't think that is particularly a good thing, but IT people understand architecture. So you're starting with standardization, and then you're trying to integrate. The problem with that approach is, I never got access to my CMDB information. I said, I want to define the global, regional, local standards for my organization, but it didn't know what is currently deployed. The big ones, your Office version, your Windows version, and so on. You never get under the hood and understand what are the different database versions you're using on your servers internally? You didn't got that. So there is a political driver behind that. Once you solve that political thing, you try to do your integration. So you integrate, first of all, with your Active Directory. You integrate it with your CMDB, with your IT service management, with your project management, with your BPM solution for processes. And suddenly I became, the architect of my architecture tool. So, and this is, I think, the biggest risk for enterprise architects, that you are spending so much effort to keep the ball in the air with all those integrations you have. So you can't really help the business and the IT decision makers to focus on their real enterprise architecture. So, and with the big players we have now, like ServiceNow is the Fortune #1 platform and the company on the world. So they are bringing all those disciplines together. So I, as an architect, don't need to spend any effort for those integrations. When I go in and apply then the Inspi apps, my Active Directory integration is there. I have instant information access to my CMDB. But look, guys, it's not a staging DB. And that's, I think, a big difference as well. It's a little bit of a religious discussion. Enterprise architects think they need a staging DB and collecting all those information, then they can do something with that. So collecting data has no value for me unless you put that into context, right? And then it is meaningful, and it needs to be just in that area where you have to make key decisions and provide the decision support for your stakeholders. So what I want to say is you should minimize your integrations. Otherwise, you have a big TCO. You can't keep the synchronization across the data when you need. Let me give you a final example. When I have an incident on a server, my server crashes. I want to immediately see that what business processes and capabilities are impacted. I can't do that with an integration because the amount of data I have to synchronize, the logic I need to build will make it so complex. But on the ServiceNow platform, I can do that because it's exactly the events. There is an event, the server crashes, and I'm just rolling up that information across my services, my applications, to my processes capabilities. I have that information without that integration. And having that ability to do that impact analysis in real time within one platform will enable me as well to support the organization in bringing in new emerging technologies to enable as well innovation much, much faster. Otherwise, I will see only, as an ivory tower, I have some idea, but I don't know really the impact from the reality. And that's where the detachment of enterprise architects and the reality is coming. I think if you do that, if you eliminate that, that is great. Does that mean I don't need any integrations anymore? You mentioned the big ones like SAP. Probably I have all my finance data in SAP. So I need to bring that contextual data into my EA environment, but not doing the traditional integrations all over the place.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, simplifying toward the platform, but at least in my experience, and again, I work for an integration company because the opening discussion.
Let's start the fight, Sumeet. You are looking to start the debate now, so let's start.
It's always good to have a debate, right? And my first presentation would be that in an ideal world there should be no integration, right? So why do we need integration? Things should be just plug and play. But when I travel from Singapore to Switzerland, for example, or anywhere in Europe, the moment I land, I need an integration in front of my laptop adapter to put it in the power socket. And we can't even standardize on power sockets as humanity. So the reality is the ideal situation. I mean, we exist because the ideal situation, which we all wish for. I mean, I'd rather work with something else, but it's a big market. So on one hand, one platform is innovating, but then somebody else comes along and innovates in, let's say, just the supply chain. They are like 3 times better just in the supply chain aspects, and then they will go and convince the tech organization that, all of that is fine. You can use all your products in that particular SaaS, but for supply chain, I'm the good one. And then again, you have to get events going. Again, the discussion is digressing a little bit more towards gluing things together, but I think that is also foundational to architecture, right? So doing projects which are complex and additive. But I'd like Suresh and Satish to comment on that based on their real life experiences and
Sure.
spice the discussion up further.
Yeah, sure. That's as you said, it's a different dimension Kavit is talking about, where in application lifecycle management tool, bringing all those information together, CMDB, that's just one dimension to it. The other dimension is the transaction part of the information, right? So all these applications, if you have 1,000 plus, and as I said earlier, most of them need to talk to each other. Then the question comes, do we need these kind of hundreds or thousands of applications? Currently, we are in the hyper specialist world. The answer is yes, we need it. I can give one example from Roche. Earlier, everything was in the central ERP system. Then for indirect procurement, there's a hyper specialist application where an ERP system cannot do all the expertise part of the indirect procurement cannot be done in ERP. So that's a separate indirect procurement application is spin out. Then in the whole of indirect procurement process, there's a L5 process, business process about invoice verification, right? So now there's a hyper specialist application just for the invoice verification part. So it means that from the whole of ERP, it came to a indirect procurement, which is at the L3 level. So from the L3 level process, now there's a L5 level, that's a process which came in. So likewise, because why you need those kind of applications? Because it gives a competitive advantage, it gives better cost savings, more innovative solutions, it helps to reduce. This is just one of the examples what I have given. Likewise, if you take in order to cash, purchase to pay, hire to retire, or digital factory, like this, quite a lot of hyper specialized applications come in there, which helps us to be more digital, more innovative, faster time to market, so on and so forth. Obviously, the need for integration comes into place.
So Satish, thanks Suresh. Interesting. So Satish, given that you built a brand new application, hopefully you did not inherit much legacy in this whole Halloween app. In that context, like where do you think, I mean, what stacks did you end up choosing? What was your architecture, both enterprise and solution towards that?
Yeah, so for the build components, we were predominantly on the platform as service components of Microsoft Azure, and we had to complement for some, credit card processing, payment processing engines that we had subscribed from external service providers. So predominantly, it was a Microsoft stack-based applications. But just to complete the conversations that we are having around integration, right? It's a near and dear topic to me. So what I would always like to apply this thinking to is how do you plan for a city, right? Let's say I have an opportunity to plan for London as a city. What I would carefully plan is what should be my bus network? How can I have the bus networks feed into a train network? And how can my train network then complement my air and then have trams and have undergrounds, whatever, right? So that basically a person can get from point A to B seamlessly and help join the experience. So the same applies in the integration world as well. So one capability will not fit all. So you might have telemetry data, you might have events, you might have JSON files, you might have flat files, you might have Swift transactions for the bank, etc. Same way, what Gartner calls it as hybrid integration platform. I think we need a fit for purpose integration tooling, right? So you need to have, as part of your Swiss knife, ability to manage file transfers, ability to do ESBs, ability to manage events, ability to manage APIs, and so on, and use it appropriately, because it's not just the functional, but there's a non-functional element of how do you drive experience, what is the format, volume, data, etc. So my thinking here is there is a place for integration, and more so that it's an experience-driven economy right now. We all expect the Amazon experience to be, customers expect it from us, our suppliers, our employees, everybody expects the same sort of an experience. And to drive this experience, integration becomes very important. But the caveat I would like to say is have a good decision tree so that you use the right tool for the right purpose and don't end up going heavy on just one dimension of integration.
Totally. And at this point, I'd like to pick and feel free to chime in at any point, but I'd like to pick a question and a comment from Nelson from the chat. It was a while ago, but yeah, So says, hi guys, sometimes the EA practice is not well understood inside the organization, especially what are their role, duties, contributions for the enterprise strategy. What are the best tools or ways to demonstrate the value of an effective practice of EA to leverage strategy hand in hand with the business? I think this is quite, the question is quite close to, I think, what Kadir was also saying. Probably Kadir answered the question before it was asked. But yeah, any further thoughts from anybody to Nelson's question?
Yeah, I think you need to talk the language of your business peers. And the best way I can see that is something around those capabilities or processes. So I think capability-based planning would absolutely help them. So don't talk about the server name or the application name. The business doesn't care about that. Like if you're doing chocolate or cookies or Uncle Ben's, whatever, if you go to the business and say, we have a problem with the server, he doesn't care. But if I go in and say, look, I can help you to reduce the cost for the production of your Uncle Ben's products. I can improve that. I can help you to automate better so we can have a better, customer journey, more revenue, whatever. Those are the things the business will like. And I think that is where the enterprise architects have to step up a little bit, remove the complexity with the frameworks, the notations, which is architecture specific, and provide the information in that context to the business people, which they really understand. And, with all of us, look, we all want to have value, right? Everyone wants to have, and everyone in an organization has some goals as well. As long as I can support those goals of that person, so they will love architecture, then I can hook up with them and start running. That doesn't mean I have to hook up with everyone. I had problems with my head of master and metadata management. He disagreed with me. He said, look, information is the center of our universe. Without the product numbers, we can't produce anything. I said, that's nonsense. I can still produce without a product number. So it's really different perspectives which are coming in. And that's exactly what I need to understand when I want to help my business peers in the organization. Look from their perspective, understand what is the driver from them. It's, again, not really a tool question. If you say, well, the best tool would be then a business capability model, showing just if he is from supply chain, if he is from marketing, sales, wherever, just show him that context and say, look, this is the areas we can improve. This is where you need more people. This is where we need new technologies, emerging technologies. Let's do a Halloween app here, which is pretty nice. That will drive more customer engagement and satisfy them. It's a completely different level of engagement. That's my 2 cents on this.
Just to build on what Kadir is saying, another important dimension is to build transparency in the organization. So we shouldn't create an image for enterprise architecture to be more of a policing organization, because then the teams, because of the fear of your controls or approvals, they come to you not because they're expecting value out of you. So always make sure that the value that you're generating is transparently communicated. So what we do in our Mars is we do a monthly newsletter and communicate all the simplification, transformation, innovation agenda items that we are doing every month. And it's there for the all team members to have a look, reach out to have questions. We do meetings with our senior leaders to every month to share what we have found through the number of. So let's say we are doing 50 project reviews every month. We need to be able to translate that language into what Kadir is saying, like, what would happen if we did not eliminate the risk? What happens if we did this? What happens if we did not do this? And educate them about how we are improving the maturity of the organization from a digital and a tech perspective. So transparency is very important. While you put a lot of effort on building standards and procedures and policies and guardrails, at the same time, try and be more open with the rest of your organization to say, how is EA helping you? Are we putting reference architectures out there that you can fast track reviews? How many fast track reviews did you do last month versus this month? What new technologies have we introduced into the organization and what capabilities are they driving, etc. So try and communicate and raise the awareness would be another input that I would like to give so that the teams understand, oh, this EA function is not only about asking questions and taking information, it's about giving back to the organization as well.
Now that's extremely important. I'd take it to a next level as well. I used to run governance for a bank in a previous job, and it was a very hated job because my job was to say no to everybody. But then I think the way to do this effectively, in my opinion, is you have to walk the walk, right, rather than just talk the talk. So do you have the ability, or in an organization, can you get the ability to do some sort of prototyping? Like rather than drawing ivory tower boxes, that okay, I can help you. That what I'm saying makes sense because look, I can demonstrate that to you a little. So do a little proof of value, and then over time, the EA organization they becomes the synonymous with the innovation departments rather than the bureaucracy departments, and it's a tough ask because again depends on how EA grew in the pre-digitalization, the current scale of digital transformation to where it is now. But yeah, fast sprint with innovations, with modern tools, technologies, architecture footprints, I think get you the credibility. So I think we are 3 minutes left into the discussion, and if the audience has any questions, let us know. Otherwise, I'll just collect some concluding thoughts. So we've talked about digital transformation. We've talked about the relevance of EA to some extent. I touched upon governance. I would like to hear any thoughts from there, from the audience there. Talked about beachheads and getting started there. But any closing remarks for the audience, right? Where do you see EA headed in the next 3 to 5 years as the digital transformation, cloud native applications, microservices, platforms, all of these enter the enterprise in a much bigger scale? Anybody? What's the future? Crystal ball.
So I'll go first, right? So the fundamental perspective of enterprise architecture is changing from a governance function. It's going more into an enablement function. So that's the first change that we see. The second change we see is more than when I say enablement function, it's more of being part of teams structure. So enterprise architects are now getting embedded in execution or strategy work or some sort of work where rolling the sleeves is required and actually get a feel for how you do it rather than just telling people that this is how it needs to be done, go over and figure it out. So the expectation is to be more of a team of teams culture wherein the enterprise architects get federated into execution or somewhere leading the execution as well. And the third dimension is be open to learn because there'll not be any single player who knows all technologies today. I don't think there will ever be anybody. So you'll always have your back pocket expertise, your backbone where you're coming from, but always listen, learn, and then lead, right? So the learning is extremely important. The agile learning, especially how quickly can you master AI or ML? Be good enough to be dangerous, right? How quickly can you master event-driven architecture as an example? So thing is listen, learn, and lead is a good approach. Always be open for learning and be learning. A fast learning is my perspective as well for enterprise architects.
Right. I fully agree with what Satish has said. Just to add on to it, one other dimension what enterprise architects, they have a big role to play is to bring in the concept of citizen developers, citizen integrators, and overall democratization of integration, and beyond that, all the applications everywhere. So that is also an important dimension where it needs a lot of thought process and intervention from EAs to get into the journey of democratization, citizen developers, and automation also, and self-service as well.
Thanks, Suresh. Kadir, any closing remarks from you?
Yeah, I have a wish for enterprise architecture. I think I agree with those guys where architecture is going. I hope that enterprise architects leave these little details and being compliant with frameworks. And as Nelson said as well, focusing more on the real needs of the enterprise what the business does rather than all those details behind that. That will bring, you know, the right attention on the enterprise architecture to drive more transformation. I think that's a must-have. Hopefully it will go there. I can see it's maturing into the area, but we need to stop that enterprise architecture is jumping on every topic like GDPR, and suddenly my EA tool becomes a GDPR management tool. Like, this is not the intention. It's the relevant information I need to show in context, but the real goal of enterprise architecture is different. So, but it's going into the right direction.
Thanks. And again, my final thoughts, again, agree with what the panelists have been saying. And EA essentially is a helping function to realize business goals, to grow revenue, to improve agility, to manage costs. And it's an important tool to build a scalable business through technology. And again, in the modern world, you can have more insight. You can do a lot of things by setting your data in motion, having data as a product along with all the other physical products that you have, and then EA as a vehicle to associate those two. So thanks a lot again to the audience as well as the panelists, and keep the conversation going offline, and have a good day. Have a great weekend ahead. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Bye-bye.
Guys,
Yeah,
bye-bye.
bye.